Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, it is great pleasure to take part in the 4th International Conference on Ethics of Artificial Intelligence. Today, I will address a theme that is both philosophical and pedagogical in nature: how to ethically reconfigure AI education in light of the philosophies of Gilbert Simondon and Mark Coeckelbergh. The starting point of this inquiry lies in a well-known, yet insufficiently addressed problem: the persistent separation between technique and culture in our educational institutions. AI has emerged as one of the most powerful and pervasive forces of our time. Yet the ways we teach about AI, when we do, often fail to engage with its ethical, social, and existential dimensions. Education continues to reproduce an epistemological split inherited from a pre-industrial worldview, a world in which ethics belongs to culture and technique is relegated to instrumental utility. This paper draws on the conceptual resources of Simondon and Coeckelbergh to propose an alternative, an education of technicity that integrates ethical awareness from the very beginning, enabling students not just to understand AI, but to live and co-evolve with it responsibly. Technicity here is not a neutral competence, but a mode of being. An ethical education is not a peripheral module, but the very condition for shaping human subjectivity in a technological world. In his 1965 essay Culture and Technique, included in the collection Sur la technique, Gilbert Simondon offers a powerful diagnosis of the cultural alienation of technicity. According to Simondon, modern culture inherited a dualistic worldview in which culture represents values and ends, while technique is confined to means. This vision, he argues, is a relic of a pre-industrial order and no longer serves us in a world transformed by industrial and post-industrial technologies. Culture, in other words, continues to perceive technical systems as mere tools, devoid of ethical. But Simondon invites us to see technical objects differently, not as inert artifacts, but as entities endowed with a specific mode of existence. The, the technical object is part of a process of individuation. It involves truth, time, truth, internal tensions, and truth, its relationship with human beings and the world. The history of technicity is not an application of knowledge to nature, but an ongoing becoming of objects that modify their environment and their users. Here we must introduce two crucial concepts in Simondon's philosophy. Minor techniques are localized instruments and remain confined within culturally defined functions. Major techniques transcend cultural borders and produce structural change in society through what Simondon calls feedback effect that alter the conditions of human individuation. Simondon also introduced the idea of expanded culture, which he defines as one that includes the knowledge and values of technicity within the broader cultural domain. For him, a complete human formation must reconcile scientific, technical, ethical, and aesthetic dimensions. AI in this framework must be understood as a major technique. It is not merely a set of algorithms. It is an environment transforming system that reorganizes cognition, social interaction, political authority, and economic production. In short, it is a new ontological regime. There are three aspects of AI make it paradigmatic of major technicity. Autonormativity. One of Simondon's most original contributions is the concept of just autonormative, a normative gesture through which a technical system produces its own rules. In AI, particularly in machine learning, we witness systems that generate evaluation metrics and update decision procedures in response to environment feedback. These systems do not merely follow instructions. They establish operative norms and thus embody a degree of relative autonomy. The opacity of deep learning models illustrates this. Their behavior often eludes human prediction, not by accident but by design. Scale and territorialization. AI operates at a global scale and across domains. It mediates relationships in finance, health, transportation, governance, and even interpersonal communication. Simondon noted that techniques, or the major techniques, create extracultural effects. In AI, this is observable in how platforms developed in non-context, say Silicon Valley, reshape norms in others, often with the little cultural translation or democratic input. Transformation of the environment. For Simondon, the environment is not a passive background but a condition of the individuation. AI, by transforming our environment through predictive analytics, personalization, and algorithmic governance, reshapes what it means to learn, to choose, to design, to relate. From targeted advertising to algorithmic sentencing, AI, AI establishes new forms of rationality that reconfigure human agency itself. Thus, AI is not a neutral infrastructure. It is a norm generating, relation shaping, culture transforming system. Mark Coeckelbergh's work in AI ethics complements Simondon's ontology with an ethical framework that is relational, mediated, and embodied. He argues that ethical reasoning must move beyond formalist abstractions to engage with the way technology reshapes the conditions of moral experience. For Coeckelbergh, the dominant ethical models, utilitarianism and Kantianism, fail to account for how moral agents emerge within technological environments. He writes, responsibility is not only about individual intentions and actions, but about the whole network of relations in which technologies operate. This leads to the concept of distributed responsibility. In AI systems, responsibility cannot be localized in a single agent. It is distributed across developers, users, institutions, infrastructures, and even design choice. This resonates with Simondon's idea that subjectivity is never a fixed essence but an emergent configuration shaped through technical and collective individuation. Moreover, Coeckelbergh emphasizes ethics and practice as something innate in instituted encounters, not derived from a priori roles. This is essential in AI, where decisions are often mediated by black box systems, statistical proxies, and probabilistic assessments. Moral action requires navigation opacity, ambiguity, and incomplete information. In educational terms, this implies that teaching ethics cannot be reduced to moral theory. It must involve the cultivation of sensitivity, critical imagination, and ethical reflexivity in concrete contexts. Simondon is particularly concerned with how educational institutions reproduce the dichotomy between culture and technique. He observes that early education is saturated with moralizing narratives, while technical knowledge is delayed, fragmented, and stripped of ethical depth. This creates what he calls disjointed subjectivity, incapable of integrating the technical and the ethical. As he asserts, the first condition for the reconciliation between culture and technique lies in a simultaneous encounter with the mental contents that emanated from both sources throughout education. This critique remains painfully relevant. In mass curricula, students in humanities are rarely taught how AI, algorithms, and data systems shape their realities. Students in STEM fields are trained to build systems with minimal reflection on the political, ethical, or historical dimensions of the world. The result is a bifurcated knowledge, ecology, and epistemological apartheid that prevents holistic understanding and ethical agency. To overcome this divide, we must develop educational models that integrate ethics and technicity as co-constitutive dimensions of subject formation. 5 pillars can guide this transformation. Early mentioned, students should be introduced to AI not only as users but as thinkers through activities that reveal how algorithms work, how data is collected, and how predictive models operate. This should begin in early childhood education and continue through adolescence. Interdisciplinary collaboration. Courses should bring together technical and humanistic disciplines. A unit on AI ethics might combine algorithmic design in a simple language, philosophical readings on responsibility, case studies of bias and facial recognition, artistic expression exploring algorithmic identity, technicity as ontological. Simondon teaches us that technicity is not peripheral, it is part of how we become. Students should be engaged with technical systems not just as instruments, but as world-forming processes that shape their being. Mediated ethics. Following Coeckelbergh, ethics should be taught through role-play, simulation, scenario building, and affective engagement. Students should confront dilemmas involving ambiguity, uncertainty, and relational complexity. Political literacy. Finally, students must control AI, who benefits and what imaginaries are encoded in its design. This involves critical engagement with platform capitalism, surveillance, labor automation, and global inequities. Some promising experiments already exist. In Brazil, interdisciplinary tech and society programs are emerging in public universities. In the Netherlands, secondary education includes modules and digital citizenship, combining ethical and technical content. MIT's embedded ethics integrates ethical reflection into core computer science courses co-taught by philosophers and engineers. Yet these initiatives are often isolated, underfunded, and marginalized. To become transformative, they must be institutionalized and scaled across educational systems. For this transformation to occur, teachers must be redefined as facilitators of ethical individuation. This requires new forms of teacher training, pedagogical autonomy, and institutional support. Universities must move beyond disciplinary silos. They must become spaces for collective individuation, places where students and teachers co-involve through encounters with difference, complexity, and technicity. This also entails resisting bureaucratic standardization and reclaiming the university as a laboratory of ethical and technical invention. The obstacles are significant. Simondon warned that mass industrial systems promote adaptation over invention, consumption over individuation. Today, the logic of neoliberal education pushes toward skills training, market alignment, and the standardized outcomes. As I asked in my own article in Education, Techniques and AI in Simondon, to what extent has global capitalism, rather than fostering creative reprogramming, promoted passive adaptation to mass consumption and technocratic management, thereby setting the field of ethical and political invention to populist and authoritarian discourses? This question is not rhetorical. It defines our historical moment. If education remains subordinate to market logic, where we will continue to produce technically capable but ethically blind agents. We must resist this drift, not nostalgically, but through the creation of new pedagogical forms. To conclude, AI is not simply a tool to be regulated. It is a mode of existence that redefines the conditions of human life. Simondon teaches us that technicity is a dimension of being, something we must engage with not as outsiders but as co-inventors. Coeckelbergh shows us that ethics is not an abstract calculus but a relational practice mediated by technology and situated in complexity. Together, together they invited us to reimagine education not as transmission of knowledge but as the formation of beings capable of ethical co-evolution. Let us educate not only for employability but for emancipation, not only for optimization but for solidarity, not only for the present but for the invention of new futures in a world shaped inevitably by intelligent machines. Thank you.